Fed Chair Powell forcing us into a recession. What's up, everybody? Welcome aboard to Bubba's Bottom Line for Sunday, August the 3rd. And we are in a new month and the end of July and the beginning of August. Not a very good start for the bulls, but nothing that we would consider to be surprising at the end when we look at the stacks, the facts that we talked about. Just one quick thing before we get into the Fed. The Lefkovich Index, which tracks market sentiment based on data like margin level, short interest, and option pricing, hit a high a week ago. And on last Monday on my call, I said expect the NASDAQ and others to be down 500 points or so within the next couple of weeks. Well, we got there because the markets were extremely overbought. But we'll get to more of that in our market commentary. But at the end, the Fed, look, the Fed is so out of whack and so far from what they're supposed to be doing that they're really more of a moronic agency that has no idea, no clue, and refuses to let the free market trade. Are they forcing into a recession? Yeah, I can't say they are. I can't say they aren't. But their rate cuts are stupid. Okay. Again, if you would let the free market trade, you would find out that interest rates would be higher than they are right now. I mean, if you go back in time, if you go back in history, in 1985, mortgage rates were 12.5%, 7 and 12. Okay. Now the 90s were a pretty flourishing decade. Okay, with the internet bubble, let's party like it's 1999, the high beta melta, and of course we're seeing that now. And typically those moves come at the end, and we see a market come crashing down. But the real fact of the matter is that you have to let the free markets trade. You can't have the chair Powell and you can't have the president trying to get rates lower. They're way off of what their dual mandate of the Federal Reserve is: jobs and price stability, not negotiating or navigating interest rates. But again, that's a story for another day. But now that Kugler, who has always been relatively hawkish, has stepped down, President Trump will replace her with, I'm sure, somebody who's in much. And of course, the rate cut odds now have gone up for September to 90% that they will. That is determined by the Fed funds rate at the Chicago Board of Trade. At the end of the day, there is no shock. I expected a rate cut to come again. But if I remind you that rate cuts are not necessarily to your benefit, rate cuts are to the benefit of the banks, not the borrower. Okay. In the meantime, there's a question out there: is AI turning us into dummies? Okay. You know, I think it's kind of embarrassing when you watch people going back to when we first got cash registers that you had to mount tender, and people, younger people, can't even make change without doing cash tender. They can't do the math in their head. And now many places you go, they have actually, like in casinos, they have tachometers that count the money out because people aren't capable of counting. I think that we're becoming far too dependent on technology and not enough dependency on ourselves. Again, you can make your own decision on that. Again, maybe it's because I'm old. I don't know. Okay. But we do have some issues. But the University of Michigan Sentiment Survey, which I always find interesting. Okay. First of all, it's based on 5,000 people. Okay. But it hits a 5-month high as the inflation expectations plunge. Well, I don't know. My expectations for inflation have not plunged. I think that inflation is higher. I think it is rising. I think if you look at the prices of food, I think if you look at the prices of other things, and now energy's back on the rise. I don't know where the statistics and the numbers come from, but certainly I think that we see prices rising still. So I'm not quite so sure how they want to tell us how good things are going. Um, the payroll carnage that we just witnessed. Now, this is the other reason that the Fed will probably cut rates. okay, is because we had a horrible jobs number on Friday. We had two big negative regressions, or excuse me, revisions going back the last 2 months. And as we've said here all along, this is not a surprise. Jobs suck. Okay, the jobs are not good, and we're losing jobs. And the real problem is the jobs we're losing aren't going to be replaced ever. Okay, and I think that this is obviously problematic for the economy. I said on Fox Business on Friday, I think that if you're in the middle class or below, you're definitely in a recession. Okay. Uh, and I think, you when you have, a Federal Reserve, which we'll get more into our commentary as well, but when you have a Federal Reserve that is trying to manipulate things, it just doesn't bode well for everything we're trying to get. Okay. Um, the inflation gauge, according to the Federal Reserve, has not changed. Now, again, they do things backwards. They don't even use half the tools they have. But this was the worst 3 month job sequence since COVID. Okay. Now I think another problem we talk about a lot is housing. Okay. The housing markets, I think, are in a lot of trouble. Okay. We've got the most active homes for sale since 1999. Okay. And they continue to build, and people cannot afford. Okay. And I think that that's something that is a bigger problem that we need to discuss. I mean, again, it's you're not going to get these. Now, again, part of it is interest rates, but more of it is general inflation. More of it is people not working. Okay. And again, I think you've got banks that are over leveraged. I think that we get into these positions and everybody says everything is great, everything is great. And you know what? Everything will be great until it's not. And of course, I'm not going to make a prediction here as to what we're going to do. But again, history tells us, and history tells me, that there is a market meltdown coming. Okay, there is a recognized recession coming because again, economists don't tell you that there's a recession until it's over, and I think we'll see how it works out. Now, of course, there's some concerns about what's going on in Russia and with the war, and there's a lot of fights on this side, but Trump deploys two nuclear subs after Medvedev's foolish inflammatory statement. Now, again, I'm never a fan of war, but I am a fan of the United States stepping up and being stronger. I believe that the Biden administration dramatically weakened this country. I think the Biden administration turned us into a bunch of pansies. And I think that, again, at the end of the day, I'm happy to see that we're stepping up. I think there's a lot of issues out there, and I think that a lot of our enemies are thinking that they're stronger than they are. So I'm not happy, but I can understand it, and I certainly want to be back to the strongest nation, but also recognized and maybe feared a little bit. I think that that's important for us to assume and take back control. But at the end, we saw a lot of things happen this week. We had the Fed, we had all kinds of news, and none of it very good. And of course, the markets kind of reflected part of it, earnings and so on. But we'll talk about that in our market report. This is Bubba's Bottom Line. Todd Bubba Horwitz. It is Sunday, August the 3rd. Let us step out for a break, and we'll be back with our market report right after the break. Bubba's Bottom Line. What's up, kids? Hope everything's great. Hope you had a great week. A little challenging, but again, some markets are very slow. So, in the meantime, we have sponsors for the show, and of course, they are mostly brokerage partners. And just to remind you that we have and I have other brokers, so it's not like I'm telling you to go. All I'm trying to give you is an advantage over others to find great brokerage, save yourself some money, get the best service. And one of our brokers is TRADIER Brokerage, which again, $10 a month saves me 100 grand a year. I don't know how you could pass that up. Plus, all of our automation goes with Tradier. Capital Trading Group for your futures and commodities needs, and we have some partnerships with them, and they do a great job. And just a reminder, uh, equity traders should use an equity broker. Futures traders should use a futures broker. I don't think you should mix the two. I don't think they do a good job, and either one of them do a good job trying to mix. And of course, ITM Trading for your gold and silver needs, our high school program. If you're looking for a little place to bet or gamble offshore, SpookyExpress.com, good friend of mine. And of course, our new sponsor and partner, The Joy of Mom, a great organization that helps moms with issues and problems they have. Check them out. In the meantime, let's get back to Bubba's Bottom Line with me, Todd Bubba Horwitz, and of course, our market report. Welcome back. It is Bubba's Bottom Line. It is Todd Bubba Horwitz, and of course, well, we talked about it. We were looking for it. We're short. We were short for it. We were looking for a market to sell off, and it sold off pretty hard and pretty hot and pretty heavy. Didn't look like it was going to happen. Of course, Wednesday, after Chair Powell spoke, markets broke hard and were down pretty big. And then suddenly, out came the earnings of Microsoft and Meta, and soaring the markets went like unbelievable reverse rally after the close. A huge run up took the Nasdaq from down 200 to up about 300. Wild swing, but then came Thursday, and Thursday markets kind of sat around and didn't do much, and then suddenly later in the day, the selling began. Okay, and by the time we got to Friday, the rout was on. But again, I think first thing you have to remember is that the selling is no big deal. The selling is actually healthy for the market. If you actually look at a chart, there is not much damage that was done to the overall market. That's number one. Number two, it wasn't surprising. Okay, we've gone straight up. You get to conditions that are overbought in any market, and you're normally, or you expect to see some mean reversion. So I'm not telling you that we have any major damage yet. I'm not telling you that I think that we're going way down from here. I'm telling you what I told you every day is that I think the market is overbought and there should be a pullback. Now we have the pullback. I think the next week or two, and of course we're in the middle of summer, so it's kind of hard to determine, but the next couple of weeks will give you an idea as if this market's going to actually correct or this was just another buying opportunity. Again, I don't think you should get just so wound up and say, well, this is it. And when you look at the four majors, these are all lower. They're now all on some reasonable support levels. Probably see a little bit of a bounce, but we'll see again. Obviously, tonight and going into tomorrow will be interesting. Um, but the markets, the major indices were down pretty big for the week. We are still short all four. The dollar itself, everyone to make a case for the dollar getting hammered because of Kugler stepping down. And I go, nah, I don't think so. I was on Fox Business on Friday. I go, I don't think so. I said, I think that the dollar was just bought up. I mean, listen, the dollar was way overbought. You're going to get a pullback. The dollar got all the way back to par from 92 cents, from 96 cents. So again, no big deal. But we don't trade the dollar. But if we did right now, we would have been short. Okay, we are short the euro currency, which had a down week, had a little bit of a bounce on Friday, but did down week. The notes and bonds, a little flight to quality, pushed up a little bit. But again, we have no position in either. But right now, I would say to you that we'd probably be looking to get short the notes and bonds once again. Bitcoin, had a down week. Not a surprise, but we were short the Bitcoin. Gold had a little bit of an up week. We were long gold. Silver, down week. We were short silver. Platinum, we don't trade it, but we would be looking for a spot to get long here if we did. The copper got clobbered on Thursday, Friday, or actually Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and when it got almost to $6 down to 440. At the end of the day, I mean, if we were, we'll probably be looking for a spot to potentially buy copper in here somewhere. We have no position right now. Wheat under pressure once again. We were short. Corn just sideways. We were long. Soybeans, we had no position. Cattle had a huge up move and then a huge down move Thursday. Friday was relatively flat. I would suggest that this could be the end, but I'd still be waiting. I'm not in a hurry to jump in here. The cattle markets are still pretty strong. Hogs are pretty stagnant and there's no position. Nat gas, I would be a buyer at $3 base is September. But we have no position, but they are hovering around support. And crude oil got clobbered on Friday, but still up for the week. Again, I think crude's going dramatically lower, but we have no position right now, and there's really nothing that we would put on. I think that you just have to remember that you're in the middle of summer. Okay, it's slower. Markets are slow anyways, so now it's even slower. The dog days of summer, the whole story. Choose your words, whatever you want. there's a lot of problems in the market. There's a lot of concerns. Banks, Fed, President. There's a lot of things going on here, a lot of working parts. And I think there's a higher probability, excuse me, that we get a much bigger sell-off. I don't think this is the start of it. I think this is just a little overreaction. But I think when we get back into, September, October, I think you could see some banking problems and some other things. Again, I'm not telling you to get short. I'm not telling you to do anything. I'm telling you what my positions are. But remember, net of it all, I'm still net long based on my longer term portfolio. So at the end of the day, just be careful. And again, remember that markets make moves that sometimes aren't logical or bigger than you think. But more than likely, at some point this week, there's going to be a bounce. Okay. This is Bubba's Bottom Line. It is Sunday, August the 3rd. We're going to step out here for a break and be right back with our commentary. Well, kids, just a reminder, our sponsors, Trader Brokerage, Capital Trading Group, ITM Trading, SpookyExpress.com, our high school program, and of course, the Joy of Mom, and they're all across the bottom and the side. You can check them out, check out their websites. In the meantime, let's get back to Bubba's Bottom Line with me, Todd Bubba Horwitz, and of course, my commentary right now. Welcome back. It is Bubba's Bottom Line. It is Sunday, August the 3rd, and of course, every week I give you a little commentary what I'm thinking, and of course, I really believe this whole Fed bullshit speak is enough already. I mean, Chair Powell in his speech on Wednesday used the word efficiency, efficiency. They don't do anything efficient. They are an organization that needs to be destroyed. Okay. They are only in place to allow the banks to continue to take from the borrowers. Okay. They're only in place. Again, if you think about a business that you could be in that's supported by the Federal Reserve, which is then supported by the government, that you could over leverage yourself, make a fortune, and if it doesn't work out, you've got the American taxpayer to bail you out. Does that make sense to anybody out there? Okay. Does it make sense to anybody out there that a year ago now, the 10-year notes were trading 3.5%. The Fed funds dropped 100 basis points, which means the borrowing rate that the banks take dropped 100 basis points. The 10-year notes went up 100 basis points. So you, the consumer, me, the consumer, are paying 200 basis points or 2% more for money, and the banks are making more money. In what life or what world does that make sense? The Fed should be ended. At worst, it should be audited. The Fed was never a good organization. They screwed Woodrow Wilson, or maybe he was in on it. At the end of the day, the Fed is a cartel. It is a bad organization. They do not have the interests of the people at heart. They are strictly doing things that benefit others and not the masses. And I think that we need to end the Fed. I'm with Ron Paul. That's the way I see it here for Bubba's Bottom Line on Sunday, August the 3rd. Have a great weekend, everybody. We will see you tomorrow with Bubba's Daily Update. And of course, next week with Bubba's Bottom Line. Have a great weekend, everybody. We'll see you later.